acceptable to the American people. But why? Why the French gave us a statue? Well, the idea of the Statue of Liberty belongs to a French intellectual, a writer, a journalist, a man that was very influential in French society in the late 19th century. And here we have a statue of this man. Can you see this guy with a book? He's thinking. His name, Edouard de la Boulaye. Edouard de la Boulaye was a fervent abolitionist. He wanted the abolition of slavery all over the world. That's why in 1865, when at the end of the American Civil War all the slaves were freed, La Boulaye was very happy. And to celebrate that event, La Boulaye threw up a dinner party at his mansion in Paris. And to that party, he invited la crème de la crème of French society. He invited anybody who was influential in French society at the time. Politicians, writers, diplomats, artists, painters. And at that party, La Boulaye proposed the idea of sending to America a statue to celebrate freedom, the freedom for the slaves. But some people at that party had different ideas. Somebody told him, Edouard, in a few years from now, the Americans will be celebrating a very important date, the centennial of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration was on July 4th, 1776. So on July 4th, 1876, the American people will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Declaration. So they decided right there, right then, to send to America a statue to celebrate America's birthday. Well, La Boulaye was a writer. He didn't know how to make statues. So La Boulaye hired a very young and a very ambitious French sculptor. We have this statue here. This gentleman, his name, Frédéric Bartholdi. Bartholdi was an expert in neoclassical statues. Bartholdi got his inspiration from ancient Rome, from ancient Greece, neoclassical statues. And his favorite material to work with was copper. That's why the Statue of Liberty is made of copper. That's why the Statue of Liberty is green. When copper oxidizes with the air, it gets this greenish color. What you see there is copper oxide. But Bartholdi had no experience building something so big, so tall, so heavy. Because La Boulaye told him, Frédéric, the statue has to be at least 50 meters tall. 50 meters, that's more than 150 feet tall. Bartholdi had never built something so big. In technical terms, this statue is what we call colossal proportions. Bartholdi had never built something so big. He needed help. So Bartholdi hired a French engineer, the only man in France at the time who knew how to build things with steel. Steel at the time, 1860s, was a new material invented in England by a scientist called Bessemer. In France, there was only one person who knew how to build things with steel. His name was Gustave Eiffel. Gustave Eiffel. He was French, very proud to be French. But this guy had a German last name. In America, we pronounce that German name the German way. We say Eiffel. In France, they pronounce it the French way, Eiffel. And that was the same guy Look at the statue in the middle. The same guy who years later designed the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So the same engineer who designed the skeleton of the Statue of Liberty designed the Eiffel Tower. Same guy. Now, when Laboulaye threw this idea of the statue to the Americans as a gift, he put one condition. Laboulaye said, the French people will pay for the statue, but the American people will have to pay for the base, for the pedestal. Fair enough, right? So a committee was created in the United States and they started collecting money. Remember, everything was paid with donations, no government money involved. But there was a problem, big problem. The American public was completely indifferent to the idea of the statue. Most Americans said it's absurd, it doesn't make sense, it's crazy to put a statue in the middle of New York Harbor. Who's going to go there? Who's going to pay to see the statue? So there was no interest, no donations, no money, no pedestal. This was a big problem, a big issue. The statue was almost finished in France, and here, nothing. And who solved that problem? By the way, in America, who solves problems? No. Millionaires. Millionaires solve. Come on! Elon Musk is going to take us to Mars, right? Okay, good luck with that. In this case, the millionaire who solved the problem was this guy. You see, reading a newspaper? His name, Joseph Pulitzer. Joseph Pulitzer was an immigrant from Hungary. He came to New York as a teenager, penniless. He didn't speak English, but he was very smart and very ambitious. Pulitzer got a job at a local newspaper in New York, the New Herald. And many years later, he bought the newspaper. He became the owner of the New Herald. And then Pulitzer made that newspaper into the most influential paper in America, the most circulated paper in the United States. And then he bought another newspaper in Pittsburgh, another one in Buffalo, another one in Houston, another one in San Francisco. He built an empire. He became a multimillionaire. Now, years before, Pulitzer went to Paris as a tourist. And walking through Paris, he met Bartholdi. And he became friends with Bartholdi. Bartholdi told him about the project. Bartholdi took Pulitzer to his studio where they were building the statue. So Pulitzer wanted to help. He had the money to build the pedestal. Of course, he was a multimillionaire. So did Pulitzer pay for the pedestal? No! Everybody says that Pulitzer was cheap. But Pulitzer was a marketing genius. So this guy made a proposal to the American people. He said, anybody who gives money for the construction of the pedestal, I will publish the name of that person on the front page of my newspapers. He made an appeal to human vanity. We are talking about the 19th century. At that time, there was no television, no cable, no radio, no movies. And young people don't believe me when I say this, but there was no TikTok. Imagine life without TikTok. In the 19th century, the only way to be famous was through the newspapers. Everybody wanted to see his or her name on the front page of the paper. So people started to donate. Hundreds of thousands of people gave money. On average, a donation was about $2. But so many people gave money that in less than 6 months, they collected enough money to pay for the pedestal. In today's dollars, the equivalent of $9 million. Yeah, talk about crowdfunding. Now, when they were collecting money for the pedestal, some people had no cash. It happens today, people have no cash. But some people had valuable objects. A painting, jewelry, fine furniture. And some people donated those valuable items, and they went for auction. They call them Liberty auctions. But in Manhattan, there was a lady. She was 34 years old at the time. She was a poet. Her name, Emma Lazarus. She was the granddaughter of Jewish immigrants from Greece. Emma Lazarus wanted to help. She was convinced that it was a good idea to put the statue here. But Emma Lazarus had no cash and no valuable objects to give. But remember, she was a poet. So she wrote a poem, a sonnet, dedicated to the statue. And that poem went for auction. Somebody paid money for it. And then it was published in many newspapers. And many people read that poem, became inspired to give money for the pedestal. That poem is very famous today. It's called the New Colossus, a reference to the Statue of Liberty, the New Colossus. So, what's important about that poem is that Emma Lazarus gave voice to the statue. Lady Liberty is facing east. The Statue of Liberty is facing Europe. And in that poem, the Statue of Liberty talks to Europe. And she says, give me your tired, give me your poor, give me your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. They reject it, they refuse. Those who arrive at your shores, send them to me. I will receive them by the golden door. The golden door meaning New York Harbor. And that poem, that message, touched a lot of people. In a country made by immigrants, and the children and immigrants, and the grandchildren of immigrants, that message of welcoming, that message of a new beginning in America made people emotional. And many, many people donated money after reading the poem. So we can say, without a doubt, that Emma Lazarus was instrumental in the campaign to collect funds for the statue. And there she is, Emma Lazarus, with her poem in her hand. So I always tell my passengers that these four men here are responsible for the physical object. Those four men are responsible for the body of the statue. I'm talking about Laboulaye, the French intellectual who got the idea of the statue. Bartholdi, the French sculptor who designed the statue. Eiffel, the French engineer who designed the skeleton of the statue. Pulitzer, the American businessman who found a way to finance the pedestal. These four men are responsible for the object. But Emma Lazarus, the poet from New York, she put a soul for the statue. She made that statue not only into an idea, she made the statue into an ideal. Unfortunately, Emma Lazarus died of cancer. But she died a few weeks after the statue was inaugurated. So we know for a fact that before dying, Emma Lazarus saw the statue.